In Twilight of the Idols, Nietzsche makes a provocative statement: "Only the weak resort to arguments." At first glance, that sounds strange, especially coming from a philosopher, right? But let's find out what he meant. For Nietzsche, both dialectics and reason are viewed with great suspicion. This critical view has its roots in the figure of Socrates and what he symbolizes. Before him, the Greeks lived in a world where actions spoke louder than words. It was a life guided by courage, instinct, and natural trust, like breathing without having to think about it. But this reality took a major turn with the arrival of Socrates, who turned reason into a tyrant. With his questioning style, he challenged Athenian society, approaching people in the street with uncomfortable questions. They were questions that disarmed certainties and planted doubts where instinct had previously reigned. He confronted politicians, generals, and leaders, people used to acting on the basis of their intuitive convictions, and forced them to justify every decision. Socrates always seemed to come out on top in his dialogues, but for Nietzsche, this victory was nothing more than an illusion. Socrates was not in search of truth. He wanted to disarm. In his hands, reason ceased to be a tool for creation and became a weapon of destruction. By turning doubt into a way of life and demanding that everything be justified and proven, he turned Greek culture from a straightforward path into an endless labyrinth. What was once strength and confidence gave way to hesitation. For Nietzsche, this obsession with rational justification was a way of denying instincts, something vital to existence. It's like a warrior who, on the battlefield, hesitates when questioning whether fighting is morally right while the enemy advances without mercy. That split second of doubt is fatal, and Socrates brought exactly that hesitation to the heart of Greek culture. In the modern world, how many times have you hesitated to act, stuck in endless analysis? Neuroscience research shows that intuition, far from being a mere hunch, is an unconscious processing of information that the brain carries out almost instantaneously. A study by New York University revealed that decisions made intuitively can be more effective than those based on rational analysis, especially in complex situations. Nietzsche already pointed this out. Instinct is vital, but Socratic culture has taught us to distrust it. Are we stifling this powerful mechanism by insisting on rational justifications for everything? Here's an emblematic case of how these ancient Athenians lived. Before Socrates, power was exercised in a direct and blunt manner. A clear example of this is the famous Dialogue of Melos, recorded by Thucydides during the Peloponnesian War. In this episode, Athens, at the height of its power, demands that the small island of Melos submit to its rule simply because it is weaker. The justification is brief. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. For Nietzsche, this attitude reflects the essence of the thinking of the pre-Socratic Greeks, assertive and confident. While Melos tries to argue, appealing to morality, justice, and even divine protection, the Athenians respond directly and pragmatically. For them, justice as it works in the world only applies to those who have the same amount of power. It's not as if we were the first to create this law or to act in accordance with it. When it was created, we found it already existing before us, and we will let it exist forever after us. All we do is use it, knowing that you and everyone else, having the same power we have, would do the same as us. The Athenians didn't feel the need to justify their actions. Power, for them, was justification enough. If they could conquer Melos, that gave them the right to do so. But are we prepared to face the implications of this kind of thinking? Have you ever stopped to think about where our idea of good and evil comes from? Nietzsche delved into this question, but chose a very different path from the traditional one. He realized that what is considered good in one culture can be seen as evil in another. Instead of accepting these concepts as absolute truths, he decided to investigate their origins. He wanted to understand why certain groups adopt certain values, while others reject them. Studying various cultures throughout history, Nietzsche identified two major typologies: the morality of the masters and the morality of the resentful. As he himself describes, in wandering through the many morals, more refined and more coarse, which have hitherto dominated on earth, or still do, I found certain traits returning regularly and linked to one another, until at last two fundamental types denounced themselves to me. And it highlighted a fundamental difference: the morality of the masters and the morality of the resentful. But what are the morals of the masters and the morals of the resentful? The morality of the masters is that of the pre-Socratic Greeks, strong, confident men who exercised their power without the need for justification. For them, the good was linked to what was strong, vibrant, and affirmative, while the bad was simply what was weak or incapable. In contrast, there is the morality of the resentful. Nietzsche describes it as the morality of those who lack the power to affirm life directly. Unable to create their own values, the resentful reject the values of the noble and invert them. What was once strength is now seen as arrogance. What was once pride becomes sin. This morality, born of resentment, does not seek to affirm life but to deny it, exalting weaknesses such as submission. Nietzsche points to Socrates as a landmark of this morality of the resentful, not the cause, but a symptom of a decadence that was already underway. This morality, introduced by Socrates, was expanded and taken to the extreme by Christianity, which placed it at the center of its doctrine. So much so that Nietzsche said, "God is dead, and we have killed him." One of the reasons for this phrase is the logic we find in the New Testament. During the Old Testament, God was more strict and severe in his choices, using his power to make decisions. But in the New Testament, he was incorporated into someone who was kinder and more forgiving. But that wasn't all for Nietzsche, because even as Christian morality weakened, it continued to spread, influencing political ideologies and even modern scientific thinking. Nowadays, we find ourselves stuck with scientific justifications, like the character Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. Sheldon is a perfect example of this. In one episode, he explains that emotions are an evolutionary handicap, but then spends the entire episode stuck in dilemmas because he can't deal with the basics of human relationships. Nietzsche would say that this kind of over-rationalization is reason becoming tyrannical, suffocating instinct and intuition. When we let life be guided only by data and logic, we lose the spontaneity and vitality that make us human. The morality of resentment is not stuck in the Socratic past or in philosophy books. It is alive and walking among us, shaping everyday decisions and relationships. Think, for example, of social networks. How many times have you seen someone fiercely criticize someone else's success? When someone posts about a trip, a professional achievement, or even something as simple as dinner at an expensive restaurant, comments like, "I bet you're going into debt to keep up appearances," or "You only got that because you're lucky," come up as a way of disqualifying merit. Or at work, that colleague who gets a promotion. Instead of admiring his efforts, we hear, "Oh, he was pulling the boss's leg," or "He only did well because he has the right contacts." This dynamic also appears in the consumption of culture and art. When an artist or influencer becomes popular, criticism soon arises. That only went viral because it's shallow content, or in my day, talent was valued more. Here, Nietzsche would say that resentment replaces action and creation with criticism and envy, and it doesn't stop there. Even at times of personal decision, such as choosing a different career or taking on a daring project, resentment of others can manifest itself in the form of discouragement. "It's not worth it. It won't work." This kind of thinking reflects the morality of the resentful, who would rather see everyone remain at the same level than see someone stand out. Nietzsche warns us, while resentment paralyzes us, the morality of masters inspires us to create, act, and affirm life. After all, those who are busy building their own path don't have time to criticize others. This resentful morality manifests itself in our daily reactions, in everything we oppose, hate, or deny. The hallmark of resentment is exactly that, reactivity, a constant opposition to what others do or fail to do. But what if, instead, we directed our energy towards creating and moving forward, rather than destroying, restraining, or busy criticizing others as Socrates did? This is exactly what Nietzsche proposes, breaking the cycle of resentment and recovering the strength and confidence of the moral masters. While reactivity lives as a function of the other, the morality of gentlemen is driven by active forces, actions that genuinely arise from within, without depending on external approval or rules. It's a life driven by spontaneity, where vital energy is not wasted on justifications, but transformed into creation, action, and affirmation of existence. Now think honestly, if the limitations imposed by money or status were to disappear, what would you do? What dreams, desires, or projects would finally see the light of day? Nietzsche invites us to look inwards and abandon the restraints that prevent us from living with strength and authenticity. In a world where justifications and reason often suffocate our instincts, are we ready to reclaim the morals of the masters? Are you ready to abandon justifications and assert your life with strength and confidence? Think about it and share your thoughts in the comments. If this topic has made you think, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Every action you take helps us to bring you more content like this. See you next time.